A murder trial is underway for a man accused of killing a close friend in 2022. Prosecutors say the defendant was the godfather of the victim's son. KCBD News Channel 11's Jaden Santos joins us from the Lubbock County Courthouse with what he heard on the stand today. Jaden.
Karen, their murder trial for Julio Gutierrez, who is accused of killing Thomas Richardson in July of 2022, began this morning. Prosecutors told the jury how a simple argument turned deadly. In their opening statements, prosecutors said how Gutierrez and Richardson had been friends since childhood. Gutierrez was considered a godfather to Richardson's daughter. Prosecutors told the jury that they may never know what exactly started the argument, but it was clear that Richardson was unarmed and did not pose a threat at the time of the shooting. The defense argued after being asked to leave, Richardson showed aggression and refused to leave. That's when they say Gutierrez felt threatened and shot Richardson in self-defense. A neighbor who testified told the jury the door to Gutierrez's house was open and she saw them beginning to argue before going back into her home because she didn't want anything to do with it. A few minutes later, she heard a gunshot and called 911. Judy Neal, friend of Richardson, was at Gutierrez's house the night prior to the shooting, described how Gutierrez got angry after Richardson spilled his beer and used a bath towel to clean it. She then said she became uncomfortable and then soon left the home. Brandon Milton, who was also at the home that night, said when he left, he discovered he left his charger inside and went back to get it and told the jury he thought he saw Gutierrez holding what he thought might be a toy gun towards Richardson. He said he then left because he didn't want anything to do with the situation. The jury has gone home for the evening and testimony will resume at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Karen?